Back with an overdue solo Q&A. Yes, I'm a week late. Apologies for that. And I am excited to get into these questions. You've got some fantastic ones this week, and we're going to fly through it before I fly to Ibiza this evening for the second time this summer. And that will probably come up in these questions too. Question number one, amazing news on the sales. What is it you sell? This was off the back of asking for questions on Instagram stories, and previous stories around that had been about my biggest ever deal that I've done in a single deal, and it was for over 520k. And that day I'd also done about between 65 and 70 grand of other sales as well, which topped up to an over 600 grand day, which was really, really cool by the time you included the VAT. So really, really special day. If you don't know what I sell, you should definitely go back and listen to episode 257, which relates to my 13 lessons and insights from making over £1.1 million of sales last year. What I sell, if you want to get into it in this episode, of course, is I work in the furniture industry, and we supply furniture into student accommodation specifically. So that is a wide range of universities, PBSAs, which is the private sector, as well as some HMO landlords, which have a decent enough sized portfolio. The main reason I think that area is a good place to make sales in is one, extremely high volume of transactions. So furniture is replaced across student accommodation all the time, either in brand new accommodation or in a replacement cycle of existing stuff, which is past its best. And the cost that is spent and invested into student accommodation is really, really significant. So, of course, you want to be part of that cycle. And then the last point that is very important when it comes to you choosing what you choose to sell and what that might mean for your income and your revenue and your business and your career is it's a relatively high margin. I work in a sector where you can get anywhere between 45 to 55% margin on most of your deals. On some of the bigger deals, it'd be less just because you have to be more competitive. Question number two, do you think Trump will win the election? I think so. At the time we were recording just 2 days ago, there was another attack on Trump. He was shot at his golf course, which is just, it's crazy to watch this unfold. I think Trump is by far and away the favorite. I think when you compare him, to Kamala Harris, Biden before her, and the completely detached from reality policies that the Democrat Party have, it really has been infected by the woke mind virus. And I really think that even compared to 2016 when Trump won then and shook the establishment, it's probably more important for the US as a world power and world security and stability that Trump wins this time round. And I say that as somebody in 2016 who wasn't particularly tuned in or particularly excited about Trump winning or particularly bothered about Trump winning. This time round, I actually think it's really important that he does win, not because Trump is the be all and the end all. Actually, far from it. There's some skills he has, there's some faults he clearly has as well. But what he will bring in terms of diplomacy and a right thinking, common sense policies to America, the world's biggest superpower that we need to operate properly, is pretty important. I spoke a lot politically on episode 259 as a solo Q&A, and you guys were interested in those opinions, so I'm happy to share it this time round. Okay, slightly more self-development focused. Your thoughts and opinions on breaking through ceilings, how to keep rising despite feelings of doubt, unworthiness, and mostly everything and everyone around you staying the same. Well, I'm going to say that the last part of your question is probably answering this for yourself, and you probably acknowledge that if you're surrounded by people who are staying mostly the same, they cannot be the only people that you're surrounded by. You must have some people around you pushing you. That is not to say, and I hate when people from a self-development podcast say like, leave your existing circle behind. You will leave people behind by your actions and your intentions, but that also needs to be conscious. You need to choose to spend time with people who are going to help you get to where you want to get to. It doesn't have to be a rush. It doesn't have to be everyone you're surrounded by. You can have what you maybe call maintenance friends, or like true friends that just love you for who you are and what you're doing right now. It doesn't matter, but you must have other people around you that value what you do and what you contribute and what you're heading towards. And that'll be a very helpful way to you to aspire to those behaviors, to be like those people, to spend time with those people, to be a valuable contact for those people. In terms of some of the other points, breaking through ceilings, keep rising, you have to want it and you have to know that you really want it. So, for example, if I was to be completely candid, I might say that I want to do this podcast full time. And if I really truly meant that, then all of my actions and all of my behaviors and all of my activities should be aligned towards that. But if you look at over the last 4 years, I have turned a lot of attention to it. I've turned a lot of focus to it, but not all of it. Not even close to all my focus has been on it. So I probably don't actually want that. Like, truly deep down, if I just wanted to podcast for a living and that was the only thing that I cared about and it's the only thing that mattered to me, then I would have done something more to smash through the ceilings. I would have pushed harder. I would have put the foot to the floor, and even more so than I have done. So that is a really helpful thing for me to realize, that sometimes people say that they want to smash through ceilings. Sometimes people say they want to keep rising. And I definitely want to keep rising, but sometimes we don't want to keep rising exponentially forever. There's levels of aspiration that we can meet to some extent and hold and pause and assess. Do I want to take the next step? Is the juice going to be worth the squeeze? Is it going to be worth packing in my job and living on my emergency fund for 6 months to see if I can just go full time with a podcast? At the moment, no for me. Maybe that's because I've got feelings of doubt. Maybe that's because I've got feelings of unworthiness. I don't think so. I think it's because I know what I truly want, which is some sort of blend between my sales career, coaching sales now, which has been an amazing thing for me to get involved in, and of course, the podcast and what that brings. But I've not been in a rush to do just one thing, to do just that. So I think in terms of you choosing to break through ceilings, identify if you really truly want to break through that ceiling, because you might not. You might want to break through another ceiling. Frankie Lee, when he was on the podcast in January, and then again when we spoke in Dubai in May time, he spoke about having your ladder up against the wrong wall. Now that sounds sometimes hard to picture, but I think it's helpful. Sometimes you climb up the ladder, you get to the top, and then you think, I didn't even want to be here. So if you are somebody that's potentially struggling with breaking through a ceiling, and you're maybe not doing what's required to get through that ceiling, assess whether that's even the right ceiling for you to be trying to push through and break through. In terms of feelings of unworthiness and feelings of doubt, that is the human condition. That's actually there to keep us safe, to keep us secure, to keep us from more danger than necessary. So really, really think about that. I think combining some of the things we spoke about in this answer, surround yourself with more people who are doing what you want to do, who are maybe pushing to where you want to be, who are talking about things that inspire you to do the things that you know that you need to do to push through. But also take some time to pause and consider what ceilings you want to push through. Is the sacrifice you might make when it comes to friends and family going to be worth it? Is the sacrifice you're going to make in terms of other areas of your life, like social, like sports, like health, are those all aligned? Do you want to push through these ceilings? Do you still want it? If you do want it, turn the taps on. Let's go. Surround yourself with the right people and really show up and do the thing when you said you were going to do the thing at the time you said you were going to do it, and see what happens. Question number 4. Do you have advice on dealing with really, really bad news? Sometimes I feel like everything happens at once. Yeah, there's that whole bad things happen in threes, or when it rains, it pours is another phrase. There was a tweet that I saw from Hormozy recently, and it was saying, bad things don't come in threes, so he pushed back on it. Bad things happen. People don't know how to cope, and they allow one bad thing to snowball into more. Bad things suck. The only thing worse is letting one bad thing ruin many good things. That's such a good point. Do not let yourself be infected in one area of your life into multiple other areas. I'm actually quite a big fan of what I would call compartmentalizing areas of your life, especially if there's something negative happening in one area. Can I contain it and set it off? Can I almost quarantine it off and not allow it to infect and permeate into other areas? One of the phrases that always comes up when people talk about anxiety or other challenging feelings is like a spiraling feeling. So things are out of control. I can't control it. That's what you're aiming to avoid. You're aiming to at least stop the spiral and have other areas of your life where you maintain control. So agency is a theme that I've been speaking about quite a lot recently. I don't think the episode's come out yet, but it hasn't come out yet. It's next week with Andrew Craig, who's back on the podcast. Spoiler alert if you hadn't heard already on Patreon or Instagram. Andrew Craig's back on the podcast next week, and we were talking about people having personal agency. All adversity that you experience is relative to the individual. I have been around people who have experienced things that I think would have been so much harder for me to handle or deal with, but they've managed to do it manfully or willfully and deal with it. Equally, I've been around people where the slightest little bit of discomfort and they have collapsed like a house of cards. Weak, soft, completely shaken by it. But it doesn't always have to be that way. You might be like that at one point in your life, and then you might learn from that experience and go on and build greater ability to deal with the hard things. And cards on the table, I deem myself to be someone who's lived a fairly sheltered life from extreme tragedy at this point, and I count myself lucky for that reason. But I also know that when things have come up, I've tried my absolute level best to show what I can do, show as much agency as I can, try and be stoic in the right way, show my emotions when it's been appropriate, but not when it's been inappropriate, and separate bad news from influencing other areas of my life. I guess the area that I've spoken about before in the podcast, my first ever solo was episode 15, when in 2019 I moved company. After 12 weeks, we got called into the boardroom. An American hedge fund had bought the business and made everyone in the business redundant, regardless of if you were new, regardless if you were the top performer. Everyone got made redundant. At that moment in time, how easy would it be when you lose your livelihood, especially if you've just made a move somewhere, you've taken a risk to move to a new company and you're pursuing a new part of your career? It'd be so easy for that to just all fall away. At that moment in time, all I could focus on was I booked a fitness photo shoot, which I did in June 2019. Still got the photos from it, still look great. And it gave me a focus to really pour myself into. I updated my CV. I sent it out to the recruiter that placed me at the business that I just joined, that had just been wound up. And I went for interviews. I spoke to the right people. I presented myself as well as possible. And I stayed unbelievably, undeniably positive in my abilities, while also accepting that this was an unpleasant feeling. And I think that's all you can do when something bad happens in one area of your life. I will fall back very regularly on my health, fitness, and well-being habits. I'll walk in the morning. I'll listen to good quality content. I will sleep as much as possible. I will limit consuming negative sources on the news and on social media. And I found this recently when I consumed too much on X, especially when the riots were going on and when there was other kind of geopolitical stuff happening. I find when I look at it, I feel like disheartened about humanity. So that is a really important thing. Have your keystone well-being habits that don't allow one bad thing to infect other areas. And the only other thing I'm going to talk about, and this is the first time I've ever verbalized this, my mum got diagnosed with breast cancer in 2017 and was treated throughout 2017, 2018. And I kept that largely to myself, apart from, of course, within the family, and I think 2 friends, because my ability to deal with that on my terms was very, very important, and be there as much as possible for the people that matter, which at that stage was, of course, mum. Nobody else really. Family, of course, were affected, Ian and dad. But shouting about it and sharing the load too wide, when the load couldn't really be carried by anyone else. I didn't even tell my employer at the time, because unless I had to give a lift to my mum to hospital, I would just, or to get her treatment, I just basically said I had a dental appointment or I had a medical appointment, and my employer were very understanding. So that was a really bad thing in one area of my life that caused a lot of concern and strain on the family. Of course it did, because I mean, thankfully mum's still with us. She's been in remission since then, and she's in great health, touch wood. But my goodness, that is a very daunting feeling. We're a very small family. I'm extremely close to my mum, extremely close to my family. When that happens, it's very easy for it to permeate other areas. It would be very easy for me to maybe let it affect my mindset at work, let it affect my ability to look after myself from a health and well-being perspective. And as much as possible, I think, compartmentalize, fall back on the habits that you know serve you, and be there to support and work on that area of your life to try and rectify it as much as possible. Some of it will be outside of your control. If it is a family member that's ill, if it is a job that you've just lost, there's small things that you can do to try and counteract that, but it's not entirely within your control. So control the controllables is what I would fall back on as a more pithy phrase. Number 5, best event in Ibiza this year. Well, when I went in July, I think the best event was, in terms of actual like scenes and actual energy, definitely having the balcony suite for Calvin Harris at Ushuaia was incredible. John Summit played before him, and I've got videos on my phone, videos that friends have sent me where we're all just having an amazing time, which is really, really cool. But I guess Calvin Harris he's got good music, but he's not who you're there to see. We also saw Marco Carola at Destino, which from a music perspective was probably more up there in terms of what I was after. This time around, we're going to Ushuaia again twice. Michael Beebe, Ants, which has Eli and Fur and a couple others. Sunday, I'm going to be seeing Solomon at Pasha. Actually, the day this comes out, so hopefully you can all enjoy any videos I post on my Instagram story. And then on Monday, we're seeing Adam Port at DC10. So I think the actual music this time round will probably top my last trip, but we'll see how we go on. Number 6, where's your t-shirt from in your Coach Crosser episode? In the episode with Dale Crosser, we were in his studio, and I'm 99% sure I'm going to be wearing a Massimo Dutti t-shirt. I've got 3 or 4 that I rotate that I typically wear for the podcast. Although today you can see I've got the Vibe tee on for the branding. Okay, number 7. This is a belter of a question. Okay. At 23, I feel like I have some kind of mature view of chasing money and career success where I don't feel motivated by it, and all I can see is the toxic aspects of being an ambitious person. Where this felt like wisdom, now I feel it's actually some sort of self righteous character defect. And as I look at where I currently am in life, a postgraduate working in an entry level, unskilled job for close to minimum wage, this belief may be holding me back. As someone who seems to be striving for success and scaling your own income, how would you teach someone to desire it as a goal? Oh, brilliant question. This is from one of the Patreons who've joined in the last 5-6 weeks since we launched that. So that's the kind of insights that you're getting over there and the kind of conversations that we're having. What do you want to want? What do you truly care about? I talked about it in the last question or previous question we spoke about actually smashing through ceilings. Is the ceiling something you want to smash through? I think the story we tell ourselves is vitally important. So as you said, there was a period where there's an element of self-righteousness, an element of wisdom that you feel that being too money-driven and too focused on career success seems like a negative thing, and it seems like it's got toxic aspects to it. But for me, ambition in the right direction and progress in that direction, and whatever game we're playing, we're measuring in some means, whether it's money we make, whether it's status we have, whether it's accolades we receive, or whether it's just the positive feedback that we get from that. These are vital parts of the human experience. So in your life, you must have things that you are working on and progressing towards. Otherwise, you will feel lost. As you're saying, a postgraduate, you clearly studied hard at university, you clearly studied hard at school, you clearly put the work in to achieve academic fulfillment, but you're now working in an entry level, mostly unskilled job. The level of positive feedback that somebody of your intellect is going to get from a job that is relatively unskilled and unfulfilling with it is going to be really, really low. And I don't mean to be harsh, but you need to understand that I agree with you when you say at the end of your question, this belief may be holding me back. It is absolutely holding you back. The story we tell ourselves can be a coping mechanism for not putting ourselves in the area we need to be in. I know for a fact that until I moved into this industry in May 2021, I was not operating at the level I needed to be at in terms of sales, size of deals, how stretching it was, how much pressure was on me, how much of a target was on my back, because I was coping. I told myself that I was working in an area that was sophisticated and respected in the insurance world, but it was fucking small fry. I was pushing along, ticking along, and now I'm in a space where I'm scaling my income. Of course I am, but I'm also getting the feedback loop of being involved in big deals, bigger deals each year, more stretching deals, more recognition for bringing in stuff that the company's never dealt with before. That's what I get out of bed for in the morning. That's what gets me excited. That's what makes me feel like I'm contributing in some greater form. In terms of teaching somebody to desire success or scaling your income as a goal, there's lots of things you can tap into. Do you feel like it's your responsibility? Do you have people that you think that you should be providing for? Of course, you've got to provide for yourself, but do you have other people around you that you want to set up for? Like many entrepreneurs that I've spoken to in the podcast, Sue Ammon is one that springs to mind, the young Glasgow guy who went through cancer at a very young age. He retired his mum, and that was something that he was driven by during his hard times. She looked after him when he was getting his chemo, when he was in a terrible state. She started to fall out of love with the medical profession which she was working in, and he had this goal to work towards that said, if I can increase my income to this within the business, then of course I can retire mum and pay for her to live a more fulfilled and more happy life. That can be something that pushes you towards desiring success or more financial income as a goal as well. Is it that you want to be in a position to provide for your future wife and kids? Because the person asking this question is a guy. That absolutely something that motivates for me. I want to be in a financial position where I'm extremely comfortable to bring a family into the world and give them the lifestyle that I would want them to have and be proud of. But ultimately, pushing yourself to scale your income and strive for success, I think it's not innate. It's not always there. And it doesn't have to be at the extreme end of it. You don't have to be a money hungry. And I think this is the image that you maybe were railing against in your earlier days where you were pushing against that. There's a balancing act to be struck. You must, in some sense, in my opinion, try to be a useful, contributing member of society to yourself and to those important around you. And if that means that you need to turn up the ambition when it comes to your income and how you spend your time, I absolutely think that's the case. The fact that you're a Patreon on my on my podcast means that there's an ambitious core within you, because you wouldn't listen to 90% of the podcast that I put out there if you weren't interested in bettering yourself in some form or some means. And I think even if the money and the financial side isn't a big driver at this moment in time, there's probably loads of stuff that you're working on which will transfer into that success in the future. And perhaps you turn your hand to other areas of your life, like maybe your health and your fitness, like your social and your relationships. And guess what? You'll probably find that you want to drive your finances forward to go alongside and to work with those as well. Question number 8, and I knew this was going to come. No questions about Rangers, but this is the worst state we've been in our lifetime. No real answers, hopefully, about Rangers for me. And yeah, I completely agree. The squad's a mess. The lack of leadership from the top's a mess. We've just had the chairman resign. We have no CEO. It is not pretty. I don't think it's as bad as 2012, which I think we can all agree was near oblivion, but it's certainly not great. Question number 9, will XRP hit $5 in Q4 this year? If XRP hits $5 in Q4 this year, maybe I'll buy Rangers and sort it all out from the top. I definitely think that'd be the case. I think if I was Prime Minister of the UK and Chairman of Rangers, I think we would all be in a better spot. Do I think it's realistically going to hit $5? I have not targeted it for it to hit $5. My average buy is under 50 cents. So anywhere above $2 to $3 would be incredible returns for what I have amassed and bought into, and I would be looking to take profit around those. If it went to $5 in Q4 of 2024, that would be astounding figures to see. Question 10, what's your game plan for Q4 of this year? It's going to be very similar to what I'm done for the vast majority of this year, which has been to look after my health and my fitness. It's been to explore my curiosity and push forward with the podcast and speak to people I'm interested in doing. I really, and I mean really truly push the boat out when it comes to sales in my day job and hit some like really exciting numbers. And I think there's actually more to unlock. Additionally, I've also been more open to experience than ever before. I've been to Dubai 3 times this year. I'll have been to Ibiza twice this year. I probably will have some sort of other trip away this year, probably most likely Dubai. I'm a creature of habit. So in Q4 this year, I will continue to be open to experience from that perspective within a relative scope. I'm not somebody that suddenly becomes open to absolutely everything and anything, but that's going to be the main focuses. So my game plan is going to be focusing on those. I think, and it may come up in the Q&A, I'm going to be doing more of my sales coaching. I just delivered a fantastic workshop at Prime Property Auctions. Many of you have seen that Instagram post. I've got another coaching session coming up when I'm back from my holiday, which is again with a property mastermind cohort where I'm teaching them some of the skills, and I've got some one-to-one coaching that I'm doing there as well. That is something that I absolutely want to focus on. And I also want to create something that's evergreen and slightly lower cost access for you guys on an individual basis, rather than just companies or maybe individuals who are particularly focused on improving their sales activity. I want to give an easier way to work with me, whether that's another video masterclass or whether that's some more one-to-one slots that I can open up outside of working hours. So game plan for the rest of 2024 is keep pushing in all the areas that I've been doing. All of them. Nothing else is going to, nothing really massive is going to get added in. Nothing massive is going to massively change, apart from I'm going to dial up my sales coaching. Number 11, with all the connections and sales skills you have, would you ever start your own business? I think the own business of mine, of course, is the podcast. The podcast in itself is a business, and there is the sales consultancy element. So I think that would be the main business that I would consider. I had a couple of discussions with 2 people who came to me talking about investment or partnering up for a couple of different products. Both of them were actually physical products, and I considered that as well, but I was spread too thin. So in terms of starting my own business in that space or partnering with somebody in that space, that was not something I wanted to do. But I think consultancy is probably one of the clearest and easiest business models that I could go into, drive success, put myself out there, and do it in a time efficient way that allows me to still do a lot of the different commitments that I've got just now. And who knows where that would take me in terms of being able to be the main thing alongside the podcast. That would be so cool. And I guess the only other part of that question I think is really important. The connections I have are unbelievable. A lot of opportunities do come up. None have been like absolutely concrete and set in stone, but I had a really exciting conversation the other day about another physical product that I think would be more likely for me to partner on, but we'll get to that. And then the sales skills, everything is sales. Any business that you start, you must find your customers, you must find your clients, whether that's B2B, whether that's B2C, you need to build it out. So I think my sales skills in that perspective and how I communicate through skills like the podcast that have helped me, of course, do that. And then my day job, that would serve me very well in any business that I would start. Right. Okay. Here we go. Another question from the Patreon, this time from Alan. What made you finally give in and start running? For those that have been watching closely, yes, I have started running. I've been doing 2 runs a week, and it started probably about 5-6 weeks ago. I had just got back from Ibiza for the first time, and I'm conscious that you can maybe listen to this while I'm actually there. And I pushed quite hard before that with my bodybuilding style training to be be a little bit leaner. I probably lost about 1.5 kg, 2 kilos before I went on holiday. Wanted that photo Ocean Beach, which of course we got. And I was a little bit unenthused with how it was all feeling. I was doing 6 days a week, push pull legs, and I was doing my probably 12 to 15k steps. And I love my steps, don't get me wrong. But when they get over a certain amount, it becomes a bit more like a part-time job. So I was just interested when I got back in, could I do a little bit more activity where my heart rate was up and I wanted to stretch and push myself a little bit more. And I think one of the fundamental things, and I spoke about this with my brother who's been coming along with me on a number of the different runs, probably at least once a week together. It's actually hard, or it's hard to start with, and you don't really want to do it. So that is quite a good sign. Whereas I probably want to do my gym session, at least when I get started. I actually like, when I'm there, I'm like, oh, brilliant, let's get a pump on. Whereas running, I've never had that allure. So this time round, I really wanted to do something more difficult. I wanted to feel a little bit fitter and just see how I got on as well. And there's a few more running questions, but I'm going to take a quick drink of this energy drink before I charge on to the next batch of questions, because it's going to be, I'm going to have to be caffeinated. Okay, on a practical basis, question 13. How are you programming your running into your week? I am no programming expert, but I can tell you what has worked well for me is 2 runs a week, both between 4 and 5k. So short distances. I'm not at this moment in time that interested in running really, really long stuff. I just wanted to see what I could move for. 1 run a week, I'm running at like what I feel is well within myself, and then 1 run a week, I'm running fairly hard. Typically, I'm doing it on a Tuesday. I do my heavy leg session on a Monday, normally Monday afternoon, and I'm probably running Tuesday evening after training push at lunch. So hopefully my legs aren't too fatigued. And then I am either running on a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday, depending on how my legs feel and how my diary is and how my time is. And I train legs again on the Thursday. I train legs twice a week for those that are wondering, and both sessions are pretty tough. And because I was speaking to somebody about this, when to program your running, because I feel that if I run on the same day that I train legs, either before it I'm fatiguing them, or after it I'm actually kind of cramping because I put so much blood into them, doing like leg extension and lying ham curl and some of the higher rep leg press or goblet squat sets that I do. So that felt terrible, but that's typically how I'm programming it just now. I've spoken to people who are far more well versed than me in this space, and they tell me that I should run slower, I should run more steadily. But what I found is I ran the other day at a 4:30 pace for 4.5 kilometers, and I felt pretty fine, which was cool. Whereas when I started and I ran my first run and I ran at like a 4:45 pace, I was more fatigued. Something that I will note, and I've spoken to more people around, particularly those that have replied that have on Strava or Instagram. I had a really good aerobic base because, one, I'm really lean. I weigh like 73 kilos at 5'10", so I'm not particularly heavy to carry around. I'm very lean. I've walked in what would be zone 1 or just creeping into zone 2, like 10 to 12,000 steps a day forever. So I have a really good base to start running on. So I had relative efficiency, whereas I do see people who start running and it looks like they're touring a caravan, running a 5K in like 28 minutes. And that's not to hate on you if that's the position you're in, but definitely we want to be working towards better times and pushing ourselves. And I just feel that I was in a relatively good position to start with. And when I turn my hand to something, I want to be relatively good at it. I don't really go wide and narrow, as we said. I like to go shallow and deep, or narrow and deep. And I like to really push myself and see how I can get on. Number 14, how's Strava Life treating you? Again, linked to running. I really, really like the positivity on that app. Everyone's giving each other kudos. They're encouraging each other. You get to see what your friends are up to when it comes to their fitness, and you can see their improvement over time if you look at their activities. And again, I'm saying improvement over time because the people I surround myself with, they are working on their running. They are working on their improvement in that area. And that for me is really, really helpful. I'm going to share one dirty secret that I've found out about Strava though, which blew my mind when I found out. And I'm not sure if any of you are aware of this. But on Strava, I've just got the basic version. I don't pay whatever. So if I take a screenshot and I put my stats up, it shows that I ran, for example, 5 kilometers in 21 minutes and 30 seconds. That's the PR time, my 5K so far. It shows all that and it goes up. But I got shown that if you click into the Strava and you click into that time, people actually don't just have their time for their run, they have an actual moving time. So people are pausing their watch or their phone and taking their time as what they present, whereas actually their moving time was otherwise. And I saw people were running like 5-10 Ks in like whatever time it was. Let's say for argument's sake, like a 49-minute 5K, but their actual moving time was like an hour and 5 minutes. I was like, how is that? Like, what's going on there? People are trying to flex on that app, and that is a terrible, terrible thing to do. If you are not truly capable of the time that you're posting, the best thing to do is not bother posting about it and just go away in silence and work on it. One of my favorite lessons that I shared, and I think it was 30 lessons at 30 a couple of years ago, as one of the solo pods, was win offline to win online. So if I'm going to come online and show you my 5K time and I'm happy with it and I'm pleased with it, guess what? There's probably work that's gone on offline in order for that to happen. Whereas people that are coming online trying to get gratification and trying to get success and trying to get celebrated by tilting and faking the metrics, that is just the weakest, most soy boy, ridiculous behavior. And I promise you, you'll be so much better off just detaching from posting about your runs and posting about your work and just getting into it and doing the hard stuff. But apart from that, I love Strava. I think it's a great place to be, and I think a lot of people will benefit from it. Number 15, are you raw dogging your runs? This raw dogging thing's so funny. I saw somebody post the other day, went to a rave, raw dogged it, no toilet, no drink, no drugs, no water, no nothing for hours. And he just stood there for like 16 hours, something like that during the rave, which is just wild. And then I'm seeing people doing it on flights as well, just sat there, not doing a thing. I do think in today's day and age, if we can remove the stimulus, we find a lot of things come up. Dr. Julie Gurner's back in the podcast, and we were speaking about how beneficial it can be to quote unquote build in the gaps. So if you've got lots of meetings back to back in your diary during your workday, having time where you maybe just go for a walk and there's nothing in your ears, nothing in your hands, or just sat at your desk and there's nothing you actually immediately have programmed in to do, can be a very, very helpful way of ideas coming to the fore and solutions to problems that you hadn't considered come up. In the same way, I joked about it with Dale Crosser. He was speaking about the power of night shift, because when it's all quiet, you just think and you just get these ideas about maybe what you want to do with your life, what you want to work on. And it's probably not really, really hard night shifts for a 35-year, 40-year career. But raw dogging the runs, I did at the start because I didn't have Strava, and I just ran and followed my brother at the pace that he was happy with. But when I started going out myself, I started having my AirPods in so that Strava would tell me when I was at half a kilometer, when I was at 1 kilometer, and what my pace was. And that's really helped me, because I've really struggled to have the discipline to run at the same pace unless the app is telling me. I guess I'll become more intuitive as I get more used to it. In the same way now, if somebody said, oh, what's your 10 rep max on dumbbell bench, I would probably have a rough idea. Whereas if you ask me what my max effort on a run would be, I'd have no idea. So I know roughly what I could do to do 60% or 80% or 100% or complete failure. So I am now listening to music when I run, albeit I had to adjust when I ran my 5K as hard as I could to try and get a good time. I was listening to like gangster rap and it was pushing me on, hyping me up. But when I ran at my more kind of leisure run at 4:30, I was listening to kind of melodic Eric Pritz, Prida, like that sort of stuff, just to bounce along to. So that can help. I think music takes mood a lot of the time, and that helps me. Okay, number 16. Tell us more about the cigars. What part are they playing for you? I think it's funny that a listener knows that cigars probably have some sort of purpose or meaningful addition to my life rather than some sort of unconscious thing that's just crept in. I think the first time that I kind of formally went for a cigar was after episode 200 of the podcast. Myself, Richard Dixon, who's been on the show a couple of times, and many of you will listen to that episode, my brother and our other friend Antonio went for a cigar at the Dakota Lounge, and it was just like a nice way to cap the feeling. Richard, Ian, and I aren't really big drinkers particularly, so it wouldn't make sense for me to be like, oh, let's go for a beer or some champagne or something like that. But hitting 200 episodes in the podcast back in August 23 was really, really cool. And Richard was like, oh, why don't we get a cigar? There's a nice lounge at the Dakota. They actually sell them there, or you can get them from a shop in Glasgow called Robert Graham. So we went there and we had that. And there's something very enjoyable sitting around with your friends, just smoking a cigar. It takes between like 45 minutes to like 70 minutes, depending how large or how long the burn is on the one that you purchase. And it's just like it's quite a masculine, slow conversation. You just sit around, you chat, and then you've got the focus of something in your hand. And I'm not by any means encouraging people to massively get into tobacco, and I don't think it's adversely affected me in terms of my health, touch wood. But it's been really good, and I've used it now to catch up with friends. I've used it to I've sat on the balcony in the sun, had a cigar a few times. My brother and I had one on Christmas Day on the balcony that was definitely not in the sun. That was in our jackets and our scarves. And it's been a nice way to just sit down with a friend or sit down by myself and just recollect and enjoy. And I actually now really enjoy it. I genuinely think I've smoked a cigarette or like taken a draw from a cigarette twice, maybe across my entire life when I've been like really, really drunk, long time ago. So I don't really know what that tastes like or feels like. But a cigar for me now is something that I like to enjoy, and I like to use that. Number 17. At some point, surely you'll get bored of throwing weights around. I think I was a little bit bored and a little bit stagnant when I came home from that last holiday. That's why the running came in, albeit I still trained 5 days a week. So I dropped one of my push and pull sessions, turned it into an upper session to have 5 sessions. I definitely think that was a little bit the case, and I have been dragging a little bit this week in particular because the solo Q&A is late, as you probably all know, in terms of Matt Smith came out last week rather than this coming out at 269. That was mostly because I've just been so busy, and I've really genuinely been training not really for how I look, but just to get a break from my laptop and a break from the intensity. And the actual quality of my sessions has been a little bit lower than I'm used to, and I hold myself to a really high standard, which is obviously a blessing and a curse at times. So there was an element of that. When I come back from this holiday, which I'm on probably as you're listening to this, or I might have just got back, I will see what I want to do. Maybe and absence makes the heart grow fonder. When I quote unquote had to during the lockdowns use a garage gym and do kind of more functional style training, more metcon stuff, I was craving bodybuilding style training. So maybe absence will make the heart grow fonder when I get home. Maybe I'll do, or maybe because I won't train for a couple of days, I'll want to get back in the gym and chase numbers again and chase that feeling and chase that pump. Or maybe I'll go and do some slightly more hybridy stuff for a few months, see if I can excel at it, and then I'll come back craving the weights. But I think moving weights or throwing them around will always be part of my DNA and things that I love. Right, question 18, circumcised question mark. Every single Q&A I do, I get a few questions from anonymous accounts with no followers, no following, which I think is really funny because, as you've seen here, the only questions who I've told you who's asked them has been when it's been asked from somebody on Patreon, because that's somebody that supported me, and I've asked them, are you happy for me to share your name on the pod? Anyone else that's asked a question, so question 17, when somebody asked me about getting bored about throwing around weights, I didn't mention to you who that was. So if you ask me a really rogue question like, are you circumcised? I probably am not going to name and shame you. I'll just be like, okay, bit odd, but I will answer it. So yeah. one of the funniest ones was asking about pegging. I can't remember, somewhere 159, 169, something like that. And then somebody else asked about the Amazon sex position. If you haven't heard of the Amazon sex position, go and Google it. It's quite an eye opener. So yeah, and again, these were from like anon accounts. I just wonder if it's like, are you too scared to ask me, or do you just, I don't know, whatever your jam is, like, feel free to ask me with your real profile next time. But no, I'm not circumcised. I don't think many UK males are. I know in America it's a massive thing, and then of course those of the Jewish faith will be circumcised. But no, not something for me. I remain intact with a foreskin. Question 19. How has life changed in your 30s in terms of fitness and energy wise? I think I've said this before when I went through a full supplement review on episode 259 Solo Pod. I have felt the need to include Tonka Ali for my testosterone levels because I felt I was getting just a little bit more sluggish. And yes, there's an element of I've got more on my plate than ever before. I'm pushing harder than ever before. There's probably more work stress than ever before when you go from doing whatever target I used to do to doing 7 figures, and I'm sitting on 1.56 million for this year at the moment, and there's a lot going on to make those deals all happen as well, even after they've been sold and booked. There's a pressure on you. So I've been taking Tonka Ali as a natural hormone improver to improve my testosterone levels, to make my fitness and my energy levels better. I think I'm probably in as good shape as I've ever been in aesthetically. I'm not maybe quite as lean and sharp as I would be if I was pushing to the absolute limit. But if I go to Ocean Beach in the next couple of days and have my top off, best believe I'll hopefully be in the top natural physiques there anyway. And the energy piece, I think post 30, there's even more focus on the sleep and making sure that I'm protecting those 8 to 9 hours in bed, trying to limit blue light, trying to limit caffeine around that. I say as a real another energy drink just now to try and get myself through what is going to be a crazy work day after I log off before I fly. And I think post 30, there's more pressure and more on you. Probably from a life perspective, you've got more responsibilities. I've got the mortgage, I've got the car, I've got family, I've got friends, I've got things that I need to be on top of. And I think that's probably what pushes on. Whereas I think in your 20s, until maybe your late 20s, there's a lot less that takes external bandwidth. I talk about this quite a lot. You've got 100 units of energy on a dashboard, and you've got all these little toggles that you can turn up, whatever they are, whether it's work, whether it's socializing, whether it's training, whether it's relationships, whether it's hobbies like golf or football or tennis or whatever you're into. You can only allocate the 100. And I think when you're 30s, or typically, I guess just the way our society is, there's probably a few more things going on in the background. So the other day I had to think about getting the boiler serviced. That was like energy that I like never had to really consider in my early 20s when I was living at home with my parents and just carried on and did whatever I wanted to do. So I guess in the 30s, other things come into your life where your energy gets pulled a little bit in other directions just to tick off some of the basic admin tasks. And it's a big reason why things like cleaning for the flat, things like my meal prep, that's all outsourced. Things like my washing, my ironing, that's outsourced as well, because it just allows me to function at the best possible level. Okay, question 20. What's the biggest regret of yours in the last year, minus supporting Rangers? Oh, somebody had to add another dig. I certainly never regret supporting Rangers. That's in my blood and it's hardwired. I can never let that go. Biggest regret in the last year. I think I would have liked to go to Marbella this year and do some podcasts. There's a really cool group of guests there. That may still happen. Would it be possible in late October, early November? We'll wait and see what my commitments are like at that stage. That'd be cool, but I'm definitely probably going to try and clock up more episodes in Dubai. If it doesn't happen before the end of 2024, I want to record a couple of episodes when I'm in London, because again, there's guests that I can speak to in person that would be really cool. Equally, I'm interested if you made it this far in the pod, please do message me on LinkedIn or on Instagram if there's any London-based guests that you think would be good on the show. Other than that, in terms of regrets, I've had a really good 2024, and I think when I zoom out, I'm going to look back on this year as yet another year where I added the whole lots of layers of paint to the mountain. I really took some big step forwards. I really added some depth to what I'm doing. Other regrets. I wish I'd done more sales coaching and consultancy, but I think I'm rectifying that in Q4. And that was one of my intentions when we spoke about my game plan for the rest of the year. And I hope to have a kind of evergreen resource for guys to work with me on that basis. And that's funny. Question 21 is, why is your podcast not more about sales? I'm seeing the big deals come in, and it's crazy that there's not more focus on it. My podcast is broadly about self-development for 3Bs: brain, body, business. And there's so many things that fall within that. So sales is just one tiny strand of what I want to talk about, or one small pillar of what I want to talk about. For me to just make the podcast about sales would not be a benefit for me. Of course, I've got that solo episode 257 is exclusively about sales. So if people want that, that's great. I've had Benjamin Dennehy on, the UK's most hated sales trainer. I've had Andy Bounds, who is episode 112, and that's back there. Maybe I'll do some more just sales focused stuff, but I don't want to make my podcast ever exclusively about that, because it's not the only area of interest I have, and it's certainly not the only interest that my audience have, albeit I can sprinkle in some sales stuff from time to time. Question 21, before we do that, I'll take another drink. Okay. How do places like Dubai and Ibiza match up with a personal growth mentality? I think if you consider your year in the 12 months and break it up into quarters, or however you want to do it, there's going to be time regardless of how intensely you're going after your personal growth and what your mentality is around that, that you must take time off. You must take time to stop sprinting, to pause, to enjoy it. And there's been years where that's not been the case for me. And there's been years where maybe I wasn't sprinting enough, or I wasn't sprinting enough on the right track. And that's something I'll probably talk about another time if people are interested in what I mean by that. But for me, my last trip to Ibiza in July and my trip to Ibiza in September, both of which are complete parties. I'm completely switching off. There is 2 or 3 things I'm going to need to do when I'm away this time around. One thing for the podcast and one thing for a sales coaching session where I'm just going to have to tidy up some slides. That is not work. That is not pushing hard. That is not my usual. That is not how I usually operate. In contrast, when I go to Dubai, the last 3 trips, December 23, March 24, and May 24, I've worked 95% of the time that I've been there. I've been to beach clubs during the day or in the evenings. I think I drank twice when I've been there, and that's a total of like probably about 50 days that I've been there since December last year. And I've drank twice. That's high for me actually as a percentage, but it's low for most people. So places like Dubai, I think it's really easy to fit that within your personal growth mentality, although there's tons and tons of temptation to party and to see people and network in a way that doesn't necessarily actually push you forward. But there's also loads of opportunities to meet people who will really push your personal growth, who'll tell you things that you'd never thought of before or framed before, and they're all very aspirational. And in terms of how Ibiza fits within something like that, I think that's just when you're taking a pause and you're taking the opportunity to enjoy the fruits of your labor and party and let your hair down, and just know that before it, as I'm doing this week has been crazy because I know I've got 4 days of partying and unwinding and just letting go coming. And then guess what? When I'm back, and I think this is why some people get like Ibiza blues or they get downs from holidays, I'm coming back to so much stuff that I'm really excited to grow and push on with. I've got huge numbers and huge deals to push on with. I've got this sales coaching to build out. I've got my training to get back into and see if I can get better at this old running thing. I'm probably going to start back my boxing again as well. There's so much for me to look forward to. So having periods where when I go to Dubai, I've got one day when I'm going to do this kind of more hedonistic party style, same as I'm doing in Ibiza. But then the rest of the time, I'm just working on stuff that matters to me. So I think that places like Dubai much easier and clearly fit in with personal growth mentality. And I think Marbella falls into that bracket as well. And then Ibiza, the way it fits in is you building it in as like this reward at the end of the sprint. Because since I've been back since July, I've been pushing so hard and there's been some amazing things happen. The YouTube channel finally hit 2,000 subscribers. The episode with the Critical Drinker hit over 60,000 views, the most I've ever had. I delivered an in-person sales training day, which went amazing. And I closed a 520 grand single deal. And I'm sitting on 1.56 million of sales. And I've got until April to beat what I did last year, which was 1.1. So I'm in such a cool position and there's been so much work happening. So I'm going to embrace Ibiza as what it is and use it as the tool to unwind. 22, a bit of a sour note, but let's get into it. The UK has gone to shit. What can I do to lessen the impact on my mental and as well as my business's health? So my mental health, my business's health. The UK is going through troubling times. That much is clear. The Conservative Party, as I spoke about in the last podcast where we talked about politics and the election result, were driving the UK in the wrong direction. Labour are doing the same, but they're doing it faster, which is really not fucking good. But when we talk about the kind of people that listen to a podcast like this one, all you can do is focus on the things that are within your locus of control. So you mentioned your business. Can your business ensure that it has a stream of fresh new customers that are paying the right product, paying the right price for the right product? Are they being serviced well? Are you increasing the volume of that? Are you making more profit than the year before? Are you investing back into the business through content and collateral and paid ads? Are you pushing forward and improving the quality of service that you provide? From your mental health perspective, are you training well? Are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? Are you controlling what you can? Are you being social with the right people around you? Do you have a good network? These are all things that lie within our locus of control. From the UK's perspective, of course, we're paying too much in tax. Safety is lower than ever before. Politically, we have less freedom of speech online. Who knows what will happen to me in the future with the podcast, the way this goes. There is lots of macro factors that are sitting outside within the UK, which are negative, and I don't want to be a part of, and I don't like it. However, when it comes to my business, my career, and my mental health, a lot of things are within my control, a lot of things that I can influence, and I'm doing as much as I can within the agency that I have to stay in a good position, to maintain my health. Will it get to a stage, if the UK really does keep going the direction it's going, where somebody like myself and many people that listen to a podcast like this one will want to leave? Yes, 9,500 millionaires left the UK this year. That is the highest number of millionaires leaving a country apart from China in the world. Insane. However, there's still plenty of good people here. There's still plenty of people who want to pull in the right direction. And I really hope that we can turn back and reverse some of the crazy policies and the crazy focuses that we have and put ourselves in the right position. But I don't think that's going to happen for a while. The Labour government's just come in. They're pushing forward the same agenda the Conservatives were, but even faster and even worse. That's not good. But in the meantime, let's do what we can. Let's build great businesses. Let's reinvest back into ourselves. Let's look after our own health and our own well-being, and importantly, those around us, and bring them with us on the journey. And I think that's all you can do, because at the moment, there's very little we can do on a political level. With that the kind of agenda is set. We don't have a party. We don't have people to vote for that want to actually help us. Question 23, a bit more lighthearted. Would you rather have dinner with Elon Musk or Z's? I'm going to have dinner with Elon Musk if that means I can have a gym session with Z's. That would be the rules. And last question for today, question 24. Everyone always asks, how's the pod, but never how's the call? How is call? I'm really good. I hope that's come across throughout this podcast. I know I just answered a question about the UK going to shit, but hopefully I gave you an empowering answer about what you can do in the meantime, because that's what I'm doing. I mentioned that watching a lot of, or logging into X recently has really got me down, and I want to credit, of course, Elon Musk for how important that platform is for us actually finding out what the hell's going on in the world and seeing the truth. But my goodness, when you log into a lot of these sources, you do feel like the UK, the US, and the Western world in general is going to hell in a handbasket, and that our politicians are willfully allowing that to happen, and that we've absolutely destroyed the kind of core fundamentals of our society. But for me, I'm still in a good position. I still feel good. I'm having a better quality of life than I've ever had. I'm investing in myself. I'm supporting my friends. I'm supporting my family. And I'm just doing everything that I can to be in a great position for my health, my well-being, how I feel each day, how I show up for myself and how I show up for others around me. And I think that is the best possible course of action that we can all have. And I would encourage anyone listening to this to, of course, keep listening to great content like this, but be careful what you consume, because that will get you down. I think it's our responsibility to have a general awareness of what's going on in the world. But if I think about back to the lockdown period, I couldn't tell you what each and every rule was. Remember, they kept changing it. Or you can have an alcoholic drink if you have a Scotch egg with it and all that stupid shit. I was not tuned into the news that way. In the same way with some of the recent geopolitical stuff and some of the chaos happening within the UK, I'm trying to unplug a little bit more and just make sure I look after myself and nail the basics that I can, and make sure that myself and those around me are doing as well as possible. And I think on that note, I want to say a massive thank you to you guys, the listener. The last round of podcasts has been incredibly cool. To go 3 weeks in a row with Connor Beaton, first ever UK podcast he's done apart from Modern Wisdom, Critical Drinker, and doing 60,000 plays on YouTube. Oliver Burkeman, one of my favorite authors. That was like really special. And when I zoom out and I look back on 2024, I'm going to look at that run of episodes and the impact it can have on the people listening to it, like you, really, really fondly. So please do keep supporting the show. Please do keep supporting me. Please do keep looking after yourself. I'll be back to speak to you guys again very, very soon.